When the smoke clears, I am the recovery plug. What's happening, man? I hope you guys are doing great today. I know my day's going just fine. If you would please join me in a moment of silence, followed by the serenity prayer for the addict who still suffers, for those of us who are still bound down in some sort of struggle that keeps us from moving forward in this toxic life that we live in, man. So if you would please join me in a moment of silence. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, wisdom to know the difference. Alrighty, well, let's get started, man. How's it going? Hope you guys are doing good today. I got a little treat for you guys today. I think you guys will like the message that's happening here today. And, today's message is, I'm going to recite a poem for you, and then we're going to kind of dig deep into what the poem is talking about in a context of the Buddhist spiritual path and in life as a recovering addict. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to just be an addiction of a recovering addict. It could be trauma, it could be depression, whatever it is that's bounding you down. This is a good way to get past some things. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful poem, and today's episode is about resilience. You know what I mean? It's a quiet resilience, that the kind that doesn't shout or conquer it, but simply just endures gracefully with life. You know what I mean? And I picked up this poem off of the an episode of the Risho Kosei Kai. It's one of the segments that President Iwano talked about, and he used this poem as the topic for his segment, and how it is how it mirrors the the Bodhisattva way. You know what I mean? And how it mirrors that type of person that you want to become to, relieve not only your suffering, but the suffering of others and all things. You know what I mean? So anyway, yeah. So this poem is by a poet, a Japanese poet by the name of Kenji Miazayawa, and this poem is not just words put together. You know what I mean? It's just not words put together in plain literature. You know what I mean? But if it could be for many a spiritual blueprint. You know what I mean? It can be a guide for living with humility, service, and inner strength. And today, I will touch on how it can support a Buddhist journey, and also how it speaks powerfully in everyday life of recovery. And so let's, I want to get started with a little bit of a bell and kind of get this into almost in a meditative mantra type atmosphere, if you will, if you'll allow me to. So I'm going to ring us in, or just a couple of dings of the bell, and kind of get that tone so that we can really visualize, when you're listening to this poem, on exactly what Kenji Miazayawa was trying to project out of this, what kind of meaning he was trying to relay, kind of message he was trying to relay. So yeah, I'm going to get started with a couple of things of the bell. So if you would just enlighten me, take a deep breath. Yes, here we go. There you go. Take a deep breath. Let it out. Take another. And let it set the mood to open that mental capacity of you, the inner you, that Buddha nature that's in all of us. Let that start activating. Let's take one more breath. Hold that for a few seconds and let it out. Alrighty, feel that tension relieve from your facial muscles, that tension relieve from your shoulders, and let that mind start opening up, okay? So yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to recite the poem for us, and then we'll dig into a little discussion. So it goes like this. Just to put this out there, Kenji Miyazawa's Unbeaten by the Rain poem it's his aim to be this kind of man And the meaning, that's the meaning of this poem. So I'm going to start the poem now. Unbeaten by the rain, unbeaten by the wind, bested by neither snow nor summer heat, strong of body, free of desire, never angry, always smiling quietly, dining daily on 4 cups of brown rice, some miso soup, and a few vegetables, observing all things with dispassion, but remembering well. Living in a small thatched roof house, in the meadow beneath a canopy of pines, going east to serve or to nurse a sick child, going west to bear sheaves of rice for the weary mother, going south to tell the dying man there is no cause of fear, going north to tell those who fight to put aside their trifles, shedding tears in time of drought, wondering at a loss during the cold summer, called useless by all, neither praised nor a bother, such is the person I wish to be. Now, let's kind of just hear that for a minute, kind of let that sink in, you know what I mean? And just feel what that literature, those words is, what he's trying to relay there. And so right away, we notice something important. You know what I mean? He doesn't say he conquers the rain or wind. He states that he is undefeated by them. This is profoundly a big Buddhist outlook at it. You know what I mean? And you can also put other, spiritual, thinking of different spiritual sects in this context. You know what I mean? And in Buddhism, suffering or dukkha is part of life. The goal is not to eliminate difficulty, but to transform our relationship to it. Rain will fall, wind will blow, criticism will come, illnesses may arise, addiction, grief, trauma. These are all real storms of life, you know what I mean? But to be undefeated is not to avoid the suffering, it is to remain steady within it. For someone in recovery, this line alone can be a mantra. You know what I mean? This line alone can be something that you put into your daily practice. And in the Buddhist context, you could say that this is right up the alley of living a bodhisattva way. And Kenji describes a person who eats simple, is not attached to material comfort, does not get angry, does not boast, but listens quietly. This reflects core Buddhist principles of non-attachment, mindfulness, humility, and compassion. In recovery life, especially in spiritual recovery, programs, there are similarities in these types of programs, and the emphasis, like one day at a time, simple daily practices, service to others, honest self-reflection, and letting go of ego is right up in line with this point. And it's right up in line with the Bodhisattva way, with the Buddhist way of life. And I feel that the poem suggests strength is not loud, it's not dramatic, it's not performative, but it's all of consistency. In a world that celebrates achievement and visibility, Miyazawa describes a person who is called a nobody, and yet that nobody is spiritually free. One of the most powerful parts of this poem, to me, describes going to help others, helping the sick child in the East, supporting a tired mother in the West, standing beside someone near death in the South, and calming arguments in the North. I love the way they use every part, the 4 parts of every which way that you go, north, south, east, and west. It's not discriminative in saying that only go help the people in the north, only help the people in your family, only help the people that you know. No, it's talking about every sentient being in this world. It discriminates to none. That's beautiful to me. And, this is the Bodhisattva way to remain in the world, to relieve suffering. Recovery communities understand this concept deeply. You know what I mean? Because as a Bodhisattva, that is the way of the Bodhisattva, is to stay in this Saha world, to relieve not only your suffering, but first and foremost, to relieve the suffering of all sentient beings that you come in contact with. And not only that, but sentient beings doesn't mean just a human being. It's the trees, it's the grass, it's the animals, it's every living organism that's in this earth. You know what I'm saying? You want to be mindful and compassionate to everything. And in recovery, in the recovery communities understand this concept deeply. When someone who has struggled reaches back to help another, something of transformation happens in you. You know what I mean? That's something powerful, because I can attest to that in my own spiritual faith, in my own spiritual path, and in my own path of recovery. That it does something to you when you start doing that service work, when you start helping somebody else, because you've already been there and you've already done that, and you know a path, and that path could be somebody else's path. Maybe not everybody, but somebody. And that, to me, it really moves your heart, your faith, your feelings, your mental capacity opens up wide when you start doing things like that. You know what I mean? And then the service in recovery, service stabilizes recovery. You know what I mean? When you start doing things for others, that stabilizes you, your foundation. And compassion strengthens and resilience. Compassion strengthens resilience, and helping others helps us stay undefeated. You know what I mean? It helps us go through that storm. You know what I mean? And one of the ways I like to look at it is that when you stop and you're compassionate and mindful about the situation, whatever that may be, whether it's something physical out here or mental, you're going to find out that if you take a minute to pause, to come back to the present, to the here and now, that no matter what's happening out in the world, in your mind, the turmoil, whatever it is, you'll start seeing something in slow motion happen. And when you start seeing that's the energies of that mental capacity opening up, because you start seeing things in a different way. You're not seeing things just whizzing by you. You know what I'm saying? Have you ever seen those movies where there's a tornado and everything's just going crazy, and then for a split second, one of the people just starts remembering things and comes into this really sublime mental thought process where he just sees things go in slow motion, and he realizes, wow, I'm really in this storm. But if I just stay still here, it'll pass. Beautiful stuff, man. And Miyazawa's poem reminds us spiritual growth is not isolation from the world or taking on things on your own. It is engagement with it in a humble and gentle way. And I just beautiful the way he just brings everything up to the forefront. You know what I mean? And the point ends. You know, the point ends with a line that states, "Such a person I want to become." That's the ending of that poem. You know what I mean? And this right here. Just listen to that for a minute. You know what I mean? Just listen to that line. I'm going to say it one more time. Such a person I want to become. You know, you can just read it and move on, or you can read it and marinate it with, wow, marinate yourself with that for a minute. Let that sink into your mental capacity and see what that does. See how it starts opening up that door of really digging deep into you. And, you know, he doesn't claim to be he doesn't claim to already be that person. You know what I mean? But the aspiration in that is just amazing. You know what I mean? The aspiration in that, this is what he wants out of life. This is what he is going to be live. This is how he's going to live. That's that aspiration that he has to become this person that he's you know, reciting this poem about. You know what I mean? To be that person to go help a sick child in the East. To be that person to go to the West and nurture and give this rice to this mother. You know what I mean? To go to another side and to the South and to let a dying person know that there's no fear in that. You know what I mean? To go to the North and talk to people about not quarreling, you know what I mean? Being the peacemaker, just as these monks that not too long ago walked up to the North to do exactly that. To spread the world, to spread the word of peace to the world. You know what I mean? In all facets, in a non-discriminatory type of way. You know what I mean? And, you know, really, really, really good stuff. And, you know, in Buddhism, spiritual practice is not about perfection. It's about intention, about returning again and again to the path. You know, in recovery, this emulates the idea of progress, not perfection. You know, you don't have to be undefeated after a relapse, after anger, after fear, after self-doubt. All you do is return to the present, to the here and now, and understand what it is that you're going through, and understand that you don't have to go through this alone. And because you are equipped with the most powerful weapon that I believe is in existence on this earth, and that's the power of free will. That you're able to change whatever it is that you're going through mentally. Whatever your world is can be changed at a drop of a dime, because you, my friend, hold that power just like I do. You know what I mean? We were born with this gift that they gave us, that the energies of the divine gave us in the seed of wholesomeness. That seed that brings out the good in everybody. We have that power. All you have to do is cultivate that power. Is nurture it, water it on the daily. The consistency of what Kenji Miazayawa is talking about. And, you know, in both Buddhism and recovery, the goal is not to win against life. It is to walk through it awake. You know what I'm saying? Let me say that again. In Buddhism and in recovery, the goal is not to win against life. It's to walk through it awake. You know what I mean? That's walking through it in the here and now. Because in that thing, whatever it is that's keeping you bound down, that's keeping you from struggling in it, or from keeping you from doing from doing a spiritual path, or or dealing with whatever it is that you deal with, addiction, trauma, depression, suicidal thoughts, anger, whatever it is, you know, if you walk in this storm awake, you'll find answers to get you out of the storm. But if you walk in that storm through a delusional self, and in a sense, if you walk through that storm just beating yourself up, or doing more drugs, or, you know, whatever it is that you do to mask those feelings, then guess what? The cyclical cycle of samsara continues. The cyclical cycle of suffering continues. You know what I mean? And that is the part of the poem that, or the consistency of the poem that Mr. Kenji Miazayawa was talking about, to consistently cultivate that seed in you will endure that storm. You know what I mean? Really cool stuff. And, you know, Kenji Miazayawa's vision of being undefeated isn't about strength or dominance. It's about endurance without being bitter, service without pride, simplicity without resentment, presence without drama, and perhaps most importantly, hope without illusion. And, you know, so I guess what you can probably take out of this, in my view, is just that the consistency of following a spiritual path, the consistency of new beginnings, the consistency of changing habitual habits with new habits of divine and energetic spiritual energy. You know what I'm saying? Because when you change that, your life starts moving in different forms. Your mental capacity starts broadening open to other ideas. You start thinking outside the box. You know what I mean? You don't stay secluded in this thing, into this comfort zone. I know for myself, for a long time, if there was anything that bothered me, I knew that my go-to was to go use. You know what I mean? Go do me a line of this, smoke a line of that, or whatever. And that was how I dealt with whatever was, you know, bothering me. That was just it. And I was just stuck in that little world. You know what I'm saying? And until I just started to cultivating that seed in me, which broadening the vision of how I can deal with things, did the walls start coming down and the new things started flourishing, coming into fruition in my life, and my path, my spiritual path started broadening. In other words, I'm taking this middle path where now I could see everything. You know what I'm saying? Really cool stuff. And, you know, I guess, you know, I'd like to thank you guys for listening, you know what I mean? And just know that that there's poems out there, man. They're just, you know, and the next time you pick up some poetry or read something, there's always a story behind literature, man. And to know that basic words, basic literature, that this poem is just basic terms, you know what I mean? It's nothing grandioso or whatever, you know what I'm saying? But just that literature, just a few simple words that are written on a piece of paper that are able to come out of somebody's mouth could have so much power to move lives in different directions, to move communities. You know what I'm saying? You know, you have countries moving here and there, wars happening, and they don't happen just because they're happening. They happen because somebody's speaking out something that's maneuvering this entity. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing in spirituality. That's the sound of the universe. That is the sound of the universe. The sound of the universe is that sound that comes out of our mouth, that vocal, that vibration. You know what I mean? And that moves mountains. It moves rooms, man. You know what I mean? It moves things in you. It starts cultivating that goodness in you. You know what I mean? And because we have that power. You know what I mean? How lucky are we? And but anyway, I guess at this time, if you guys would please hit the subscribe button, man. Please share my channel. You know, this is the only way to help others, to spread a message, is to share and to, you know, and to cultivate. You know, I mean, this is part of the cultivation to spread messages like this of good wisdom and spiritual guidance and stuff. So, yeah, but I guess until the next time, man. Until the next time, stay compassionate, stay mindful, and stay undefeated. Till the next time, I am the Recovery Plug. Thank you for watching.